Good afternoon, everybody. Really looking forward to this webinar focused on how to support employee wellbeing with pulse surveys. I will just give it 30 seconds for those that may be jumping from one Zoom that was supposed to finish at 12 o'clock onto the next one of our webinar, just to make sure that we've got the audience that we're looking for that have signed up. There seems to be a really good response to today's topic. It appears to be a really important topic for many. So I'm looking forward to the next 30 minutes in terms of presenting our findings and webinar to you on this topic. Okay, let's make a start. Well, welcome everyone, and I am delighted that so many have been able to join me on our webinar this afternoon. It does indeed appear, as I've mentioned, a really important topic for so many. My name is Mike Brennan, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Stribe, and I'll be leading on the webinar this afternoon. The core webinar will be between 20 and 30 minutes, with the presentation being led through, plus time for a Q&A. So I'll have you all away well within the hour. Like I say, sort of 30 minutes to 45 minutes all in, I think. There's a Q&A box for questions at the bottom. As you can see, as I go through the presentation, if you think of any questions or any thoughts that you'd like to raise, please do just pop them in that Q&A box. I'll then pick them up at the end of my presentation. We'll have a really good discussion around some of the questions. It could be questions that other people are thinking of that they're too scared to ask. So please do make sure you ask all the questions all the way through to make this as interactive as possible. There's also a wonderful feature that we always talk about called Vote Up. So if there's lots of questions that come through from the large audience today, if you click on the Vote Up, it will get the question that you want to vote up higher to the top. And I literally just start at the top of the questions and work our way down. How to support employee wellbeing with pulse surveys. Wow, what a topic given the current climate and including lockdown 3.0 that some of us were expecting and some of us weren't expecting. In today's webinar, we're going to focus on who is Stribe, the business case for good employee wellbeing, why are pulse surveys the answer, how to harness the power of pulse surveys, and then, as I mentioned, an audience Q&A. I can see questions coming through already, which is absolutely fantastic. So please do write your questions into the Q&A box at the bottom, and I'll pick these up at the end. So without further ado, let's start with who is Stribe and what do we do? We're people experts and have worked with some of the world's most forward-thinking organisations over the last 6 years, including Wigan Council, Barclays Bank, the Scottish FA, BGCI Insurance Group, Jackson Lees, and many, many more, to name but a few. We truly believe happy, healthy employees are at the heart of every successful organisation. And we give organisations the tools to make this a reality. And not just because we think so, but because we have seen the transformation in organisations when this is the case. Employee needs, as we all know, are rapidly changing. And this data is taken from the annual population survey from the Office of National Statistics, which demonstrates our average life satisfaction by age. As we leave education and enter the world of work, we swiftly realise the reality of our student debt in the top left and the new world of working. Next, motivation through pay rises, encouragement and promotion increases our satisfaction, followed swiftly by the reality check of workload and responsibilities right at the bottom in the red that you can see. And then we move back up the satisfaction curve as we grow older and move towards retirement. The important point to note here is that employee life satisfaction fluctuates over time as people move through life cycles. And this can be really, really difficult to manage. This, of course, creates a complicated picture for teams. And the bigger the team becomes, the bigger the complexities you're going to face. If you were to take the average life satisfaction by age graph and overlay this with a snapshot of just 8 of your team, so think of an organization with 100 staff or 2,000 staff, and just take 8 of your team, you will see from the illustration that that teams can have very different needs. As teams get bigger, it is harder to understand and listen to your employees, which is the backbone of being able to create happy, healthy teams. Here at Stribe, we focus on three key principles. Number one, better teams will create better organizations. That is a fact. Number two, action, not admin, with bite-sized insights. And number three, the best performing teams talk a lot. Our solution helps you create better teams by making it easier for you to listen to and understand your employees wherever they are in that life cycle. We help you focus on action, not admin, by providing bite-sized insights and analysis that is easy to act on. Part of our tool allows you to send pulse surveys which encourage employees to talk. The quick to send and quick to analyze technology provides feedback at every point so you know your actions are creating positive change for your employees. And so to the business case for good employee well-being. The question is, why should we care about employee well-being? Well, because the cost of poor employee well-being is absolutely huge. The global cost currently of poor employee burnout is currently 255 billion per annum. And the cost of poor employee mental health in the UK alone sits at 45 billion pound. On the flip side of this, when organizations support their employee well-being and understand their employee needs, employees are almost 5 times more likely to perform their best work. Employee well-being is moving from a nice to have to a must have. We're starting to understand the data and benefits, and it is now creating a clear business case. And many employees are now choosing careers and companies to work for based on their health and well-being experiences. The biggest obstacles to recruitment are increasingly around organizational reputation, particularly in terms of poor leadership and dysfunctional teams. Nearly half of employees would rule out joining a firm that showed those characteristics regardless of a pay increase. A 10% rise would only entice just over a quarter to join such a company. As a result of this, a company could spend an additional £3,200 per hire if they do not have the right environment for employees to join and support. And so, why are pulse surveys and pulse campaigns the answers? Simple and highly customizable pulse surveys allow you to track what matters. This will help you implement changes that are important to your team. Using pulse campaigns, they allow you to monitor responses as they happen so you can adapt very quickly, as well as identifying longer term trends to support meaningful change over larger strategy implementations. Employees answer our pulse surveys within their inbox, improving the response rate and giving you a truer picture of your whole organization. Because pulse surveys take such a short time to complete, our pulse questions give you up-to-the-minute information. They also allow you to compare responses over time. So you get quick insights, and also you can compare the previous question to the current question, and then looking at that over time to see the trends of what is and isn't working. And unique to Stribe, our pulse survey reports clearly display the data important to you. Whilst it's not scrimping on any of the detail, it's all completely automated and you don't have to lift a finger. A lot of the organizations that we work with struggle with the admin and extracting the data around that. We do all of this for you, as you can see on that screen in the presentation. So how do you harness the power of pulse surveys for your well-being strategy? A really key question. The first thing that we look to do is simplify a complicated picture. Maslow's hierarchy of needs simplifies a complicated picture and helps you focus your efforts, creating a stronger well-being strategy overall. The idea of Maslow's theory is that your employees' needs are constantly changing, and as one need is met, they desire as employees other needs. The beauty of the system is that it provides a structure to work towards that. It is easily adaptable to your own organization. The results have been proven in businesses time and time again. And a 2002 study by Harter et al. Found that employee engagement, which is defined as individuals' involvement and satisfaction with their work, had a direct relationship with business outcomes. Their research showed that as employee engagement improved, so did customer satisfaction, productivity, and profit. In addition, both employee turnover and workplace accidents decreased. Really, really important. The next part is to create a structure to understand where to improve within your organization. Viewing Maslow's theory in the context of employee engagement gives a clear picture of how pulse surveys can give incredible insights into exactly where you need to improve in your organization. Each level of hierarchy illustrates the different level of needs that influence employee engagement, from basic survival needs at the bottom of the graph that you can see to growth at the top. By structuring your pulse surveys to reflect these levels, you can begin to understand where your gaps are in your organization, your strategy, and support for your people. This makes it easier to make informed decisions about how to improve your employee engagement strategy. And a key component of strengthening any strategy is focus, absolute focus. Sending and analyzing your pulse questions in line with Maslow's hierarchy of needs will help you understand where you have gaps. Understanding these will help you make informed decisions about your employee engagement strategy. By using this structure, your well-being strategy will become simpler and easier to execute, and it will help you to gain a clearer picture from your pulse surveys of exactly where you need to focus. So how can Stribe's pulse surveys support you to deliver change and transformation in your organization? There are three key considerations when introducing, or as we like to say, leveling up your pulse surveys. The first is to choose the right moment. Consider how you can use recurring pulse surveys to give you a snapshot in time and help you identify longer-term trends. Rather than looking at an annual survey and having a point in time on the 5th of January and asking 50 questions and doing the same once a year, answering a single pulse question once a week over 52 weeks will give you real-time data to see the trend of how your staff are feeling and to understand what their needs are at the different points in time over those periods, weekly, monthly, or quarterly. The second is to choose the right medium. It's not just when to send a survey that organizations need to consider, but also how it is received by your staff. It's important that everyone in your organization has the opportunity to have their voice heard. Make sure your pulse survey software, or if you introduce pulse survey software, that it has the ability to send pulse surveys via the web, smartphone apps, and gives the ability to answer pulse surveys directly within email too, to speed that up. And even consider offline if your staff don't have access to company devices or on the network. What we found working with companies, a really important point, is that many will say that their engagement rates or their survey responses are really, really low. And they think it's because their staff don't want to respond. But actually, it's because their staff can't. It's because their survey platform does not enable you to get the questions into the hands of the employees in an easy way to get quick responses. It's a really important part to think about your engagement rates. It's not sometimes that people aren't responding, it's that they can't respond to the questions or can't access. The final point is to select the correct format. Whilst open text questions add depth to a survey, these can add to the time it takes to complete the survey. As I mentioned, the annual survey can take half an hour with 50 questions. Aim to use a simple click to collect question format with the ability to add further information should the employee wish to. Our pulse surveys give you the ability to achieve both. You can pulse a quick click and collect question that can be received on any device or on any platform. And you can also have the ability to understand why they're responding the way they are through free-form text. The great news is you can even avoid the analysis at the end. We do it all for you, and I'll show you one of our graphs later on in the presentation. The next step is to create your pulse questions. At Stribe, we have banks of questions for you to choose from, but you can also create your own, because ultimately it's about your organization and your environment and your people and the questions that are unique to you and your setting. But in the context of what we're talking about today, here are some ideas for questions that would help you identify where you need to focus on employee well-being in your organization and how that feeds back into your overall organizational well-being strategy in line with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And I'll just walk down some of these questions and I'll give you an example of how we bring this to life. So if we think about that triangle of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and we start at the bottom of survival, I have the right tools and resources I need to do my job. If people don't have the right tools and resources, they cannot survive, they can't deliver the bare basics of working in your organization. A really important one to think about, particularly now when staff are working at home. Do they have the right tools and resources in their living rooms, in their kitchens, in their offices to do the day-to-day work that you're expecting of them? Safety. I feel the organization cares about my well-being. This is a really important question, particularly over the last 12 months with the pandemic that we've lived through. Understanding how people feel about your organization's approach towards well-being will give you a number of answers that you can act upon. Belonging. This relates to retention. I can count on my teammates when I feel I need support. It's about the team and the community around you. If people aren't communicating and helping one another, how on earth can your team members thrive, grow, and feel happy in your organization and want to stay and want to do good and want to grow the business that you're in? The next, I would go up to the top of the funnel, self-esteem. I have the opportunity to explore new and better ways to do my job. This trend of psychological safety and the ability to give employees confidence and freedom and trust to explore new and better ways to do their job is only going to help the efficiencies and the improvement of your business. It's about encouraging, supporting, and creating an environment for your staff to be able to flourish. But first, you need to make sure that environment is workable and supportive towards them. And the final point of Maslow's triangle is growth. I am proud to work for this company. When it comes to analyzing your results from your pulse questions, this is where Stribe is really unique. If we take the point of growth within Maslow's hierarchy of needs and the pulse survey example, I am proud to work for this company. Receiving positive results can allow you to share this with the world when looking to attract new talent. Receiving negative results can lead to very quickly you reviewing the data and understanding why this may be the case. It's really, really important that you look at both sides of the data as it comes through. You can do that all within Stribe. As I mentioned, within Stribe, you can view in real time results by demographics and protected characteristics. So thinking about your inclusion agenda, your wellbeing agenda, your diversity agenda, and looking at different cohorts of staff to see their responses. Male versus female, for example. Is there more of a positive response from females, and why is this? Or is there a negative response from males, and what do we need to do to support this to become positive? Really, really quick insights that become very powerful in terms of supporting your strategy. You can also have follow-up questions that enable you to understand the why and not just the what. As I mentioned before, you can send a question, for example, which is, I am proud to work for this company. And if that is a yes or a no, you can follow up, say, please tell me why, and pull that through. And this enables you to structure questions that allow you to implement support and change really quickly. And one of the most unique points is Stribe's machine learning and sentiment analysis takes all of your data and makes sense of it automatically. You can see here from the graph, all of your data, whether you've got 50 employees or 50,000 employees, comes together for you to see big data and qualitative data really, really quickly. And in fact, that's a key point of what we do, because it helps you to group data together to understand qualitative responses in a quantitative way. We've supported lots of organizations recently from many different sectors, including consultancy, legal, technology, and education, to name but a few. And I wanted to share just a couple of examples of how Stribe's dashboard and pulse surveys have influenced change within these organizations. Most recently, we've been working with one of the largest insurance groups in the UK through a leadership program. And what they wanted to be able to do was understand their leadership needs with that and comparing that to their employee needs on the front line. They very quickly pulsed out a number of questions over a 10-week period prior to the Christmas break, and they're able to identify how staff were feeling, how valued they were feeling, how leadership was supporting them, and they compared that with the views of leadership. And what they're able to do is find some quite significant gaps that were very easy to fix and change through communication processes and through retraining. And they're now aligning their leadership and employees so they can both work together hand in hand. Our advocate college, Wigan Lee College, most recently won the Times Top 100 and Best Companies to Work For. But what they found was that they got all this data together once a year, and it was year upon year, but they weren't able to listen to their staff's views and to align their wellbeing strategy with the feedback from their staff to adapt that in real time. So they introduced pulse questions, so they can pulse out questions to their 500 staff across the college. And what they're able to do is, based upon the feedback that comes back from different teams, faculties, or departments, they're able to put the right interventions and support in place. Lineups Systems, a wonderful technology system and organization. They were doing annual surveys, but wanted to do more frequent, regular surveys to compare the footprint globally across their 14 international offices to understand how staff were feeling by location and then also by gender, to make sure that the right support and cultural elements were put into play, and ultimately to support the well-being of their staff across the globe. And finally, Jackson Lees, our advocate legal firm, they were focused on the high-level version of culture and making sure that each individual could bring their best selves to life and speak openly and freely within that organization. And working with the wonderful Gemma Ellison, who we had recently on one of Stribe's presentations, she's been able to get really quick insights right from the front line of her 300 staff to understand where areas of support is required, particularly during the current pandemic. But for us, the proof is in the pudding. There is lots of pulse survey technology out there to support you to achieve your goals. But Stribe's combination of machine learning and sentiment analysis allows you to understand the well-being needs of your colleagues in incredible detail at the click of a button. All of those examples that I gave you was from being able to collect very quick, real-time insights from employees right on the front line, and then being able to view that in a single dashboard to chop and change that data without a spreadsheet, without any data administration or teams, just you in your dashboard to say, right, here's where the opportunity is for us to double down and continue with our success. This is working well, let's do more of it. Or, here's areas of concern that may not be working as well as other areas. How can we double down on this, and how can we support our employees? How can we understand our team's needs and different teams' needs by location, by different demographics, so that we can put targeted interventions and responses really quickly? Because one size does not fit all in the environment of organizations caring and understanding your people. There will be teams that are performing extremely well at the minute that you'll want to learn from and take those insights back into teams that may not be, as opposed to doing a blanket approach of support and strategy. There'll be different well-being needs for different departments, different locations, different working styles. So it's important that you tailor your strategy and responses to support those environments. But you can only do that by measuring, monitoring the success and feedback of what your employees are feeling, thinking, and needing on that front line. Ultimately, planning is the absolute key to success with pulse surveys. We always work with every organization in a very small way to start with, and we help you to plan every answer so that you know you can create change based upon the feedback from your employees. So it's about building trust. It's about getting the engagement levels up if they're not already. It's about understanding your employees' well-being and being able to do something about it. So for example, if you know that your employees need further resources or support at a particular moment in time, then when you're asking that question, it's important that you at least have some options and some answers and some support frameworks that you can then share back very quickly. And one of the key parts of Stribe is it allows you to pulse a question to your employees, to get that feedback back in, and then very quickly, once you review the data, you can actually share back what you're going to do. The we said you did model, which a lot of organizations forget. They get the data, they do something with it, but they forget to tell their employees off the back of their pulse feedback what they're going to do to support them. So it's about closing that loop through 360-degree feedback through pulse surveys. And if you focus on the well-being of your staff, the other parts of the business around productivity, profitability, and engagement will start to increase, because employees will feel 5 times more likely to be productive as a result of their voice being heard. As I mentioned, Throughout these journeys, we support organizations at every step, from question creation to ensuring they can see real change and success with their pulse survey programs. There'll be organizations on this webinar today that have been doing surveys for years, and they're looking at new ways to structure their pulse surveys, new ways to engage with their staff. We can certainly support you to understand what our other ecosystem of clients are doing and share that best practice. But there are also organizations on here that will be using SurveyMonkey or Microsoft Forms or tools because that's what they know they've got in their armory to ask the question. But they'll be spending so much time trying to collate that data, identifying patterns. And when the organization says, great, can we compare the first set of questions in March 2020 to the next set of questions in March 2021, for example, that's going to be very difficult for you to do without having software such as Stribe to track the measure and change over time. It's an incredibly important time to ensure that we are supporting employee wellbeing, particularly while so many staff work remotely. I've tried to provide an overview of the importance of pulse surveys and aligning this to employee wellbeing and how this can support the overall point of view of your organization in terms of growth, productivity, and profitability. But it's really, really important that we think about how we're speaking to our employees today, how we're connecting with them in real time as they work from home or they work in the office or they're working remotely. And I'd be delighted to continue this conversation with anybody that's interested in learning more, that's perhaps about to launch a survey and thinking about how best to do that, that may be thinking about introducing some new software and wonders what's the best system for their organization. We work through that on a diagnostic stage and work with you to make sure that at every step of the journey, you can ultimately understand your staff's needs very, very quickly compared to what's been happening previously. So that concludes the short presentation today in terms of introducing you to Stribe and how this can support you to deliver pulse surveys. I'm now going to open the floor to questions, and I've got 3 questions already, but whilst I do my best to respond to these questions, if there are any other questions as I sort of talk through or you've thought about and you'd like to put into the Q&A box, please do click at the bottom and add them and I'll work my way through. So I'm just going to stop sharing the presentation so that you can see my voice and see me. Well, you can't see my voice, you can hear my voice, but see me. And off the back of that, I'm going to answer the questions in front of me. So the first one at the top is, what are your top tips for getting started with pulse questions? I think that's a really good question. I think I touched on it briefly throughout the presentation in terms of understanding what you are wanting to achieve. What is your end goal? We want to support our employee well-being. Great. Well, it's then breaking that down and understanding what information would you support you to help your staff well-being. Do you need to understand the whole organization's well-being view, or do you need to look at different departments? Is there a particular area you're concerned about and you want to target a question into that area? And then in terms of getting started, it's very much making sure that you have a system in place that allows you to easily set up pulse questions, but more importantly, allows those pulse questions to be responded to or accessed by your employees. As I mentioned at the start of this presentation, a lot of organizations, when starting out with their pulse question journey, will put a system in place, will send a question out, and will hope it lands to an employee to log into a system. But if you think about large organizations, if we think about local authorities, a lot of those employees are not connected to a network or do not have access to company devices. They're working out on the front line. They're driving dustbin wagons. They're supporting young people in the community. So it's important that having the pulse surveys and the right questions landing into the hands of those employees, you get the feedback as quickly as you can. Starting small. In terms of getting started with pulse questions, it's starting small. Questions such as, how are you, or how do you feel, or do you have the information that you need? Back to the Maslow's safety style questions right at the start of survival. Those basic questions will allow you to understand truly how your staff are feeling. And as you become confident in pulse surveying, and as your staff start to respond and you see those increased engagement levels, then really, really quickly, you can start to increase the style and types of questions. But it's all about asking questions quickly in real time to support with the moments that you want to change in your organization. I hope that helps. And if there's any questions I've not answered, please do pop a follow-up onto there, and I'll make sure I clarify my responses behind that. Next question. How do we reach dispersed workforces who don't have access to technology and devices regularly? Really good question, and one that we're really focused on and why Stribe's unique. So most survey platforms will give you a web system that you can set up a survey, such as SurveyMonkey, and you will send a link, and that will require the employee to log in with multiple steps and then complete the survey to give the feedback. The question is how do you reach dispersed workforces? So that can mean a number of things. They may not have access to technology and devices regularly, like it's been mentioned, or they may not even be on a network or popping into the office to be able to support that. So we have within Stribe 3 different ways of you connecting to your employees. We have the day-to-day, the system in which you can connect via web and send a link. We have the ability for you to send a question directly into an employee inbox. And we also have the ability for you to also share with your employees the Stribe app. So employees can download the app on their own mobile devices on Android or iOS, so you can pulse a question directly to them. And we're now going one step further, particularly working with public sector organizations or organizations with very dispersed workforces. We've introduced a way to do offline surveying. So via QR codes, postal letter format, you can put QR codes up in your organization's environment, and employees on their own devices or the community can scan these QR codes and can complete that survey in real time. It's about making sure that the questions and pulse questions that you ask are accessible at every possible opportunity. So whilst you do require the majority of the time a Wi-Fi enabled device, we're making sure that on every network via email, on every device such as iOS or Android, or even offline on QR codes, you can reach your most hard to reach workforce. I hope that answers the question. And the final question I've got so far is, what questions do you think are best for people who are just getting started with pulse questions? I'd refer back to the Maslow's hierarchy examples questions that if you're just getting started, you probably want to understand the survival stage at the lower end of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that I have the right tools to deliver my job, or questions that are around that survival of how are you feeling today. We have an employee handbook and pulse guide, which I'm happy to share with everybody after this, and it talks in a bit more detail about some of the example questions. We give 25 questions across the different structures of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So there'll be 3 or 4 questions in there. But again, if you'd like to email us at hello@stribehq.com, that's hello@stribehq.com, I'd be more than happy to discuss kind of where you're at with the pulse questions if you're just getting started, to understand if you've ever asked a survey before, so we can look at some of that data, and perhaps my team can help you to understand what would be the best questions in line with your strategy that you're looking to implement to be answered. But more than happy to support that. But again, just to repeat, very simple questions that I think we as leaders would want someone to ask us. Leaders are in a position where they're expected to support their own well-being, support one another, and then an organization of 50 employees to 5,000 employees, for example. So think about the questions that you would want to be asked, and think about how you would effectively answer them. And then what we can do, if you have a list of those questions, we can compare them to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and we can structure them into the different stages so that you can see what might happen. But again, more than happy for us to have a demonstration of the platform, show you how easy it is to ask a question, show you the different types of questions that some of our organizations have asked at the same stages of you, compare some of that data anonymously, and then look at what types of pulse questions would work best in your organization. Is there any other questions? I'm conscious there's lots of people on the system, and maybe I've answered all of the questions going through the presentation. This webinar will be recorded. We will be sharing this with you, and we will be sharing our pulse guide, which includes the detail behind the Maslow's hierarchy of needs format. It includes how to support diverse workforces, and it includes how to start the journey if you're thinking about introducing pulse surveys. If there aren't any questions, the point I would leave you on today is there's never been a more important time to ask how your staff are feeling or to understand your staff's needs. There's a lot of uncertainty, particularly for staff members that are working remotely, that are in their homes, that understand through your communications that we're doing well, our business is good. But it's ensuring that you provide the right channels for your employees to confidentially and anonymously share their feedback. But even more importantly is that you collect that information in real time so you can do something about it. There is no point in asking your staff how they're feeling today and not doing anything with that. The problem that comes is because survey platforms and providers don't give you that information easily. So by the time you compare, contrast, and collect and analyze that data, it's too late. You need to be asking your staff how they're feeling now, what support they need, what resources they need, so that you can tick those boxes based upon their feedback, support those staff that need that, and continue to encourage the staff that are doing well to ultimately get through this pandemic. And what you'll be able to do over time, if you start pulsing questions out to your staff now, if you haven't done so already, or thinking about the right questions to pulse to your staff today, when you get into a regular routine of that, you'll be able to see how staff are feeling in a pandemic, and equally how they've grown with the organization, how the engagement levels increased, how productivity is increased. You'll be able to track all of that as a result of supporting different teams at the right time. I'm Michael Brennan, CEO and co-founder of a wonderful organization called Stribe. My team are extremely passionate about this subject of helping organizations to understand their people's needs and ultimately to create wonderful well-being, engagement, and cultural strategies to support in your organization. So I really look forward to continuing this discussion with those that are on the call, and I look forward to following up in due course. Have a great rest of your week. Make sure there's lots of walks, make sure there's lots of fluids getting drank, make sure there's lots of good food being eaten to keep your spirits high, your motivation high as we're working through the difficult time. And I'm looking forward to us getting back to a world of normal in due course. Speak soon and take care.